Hello, everyone. My name is Jamie Johnson. I want to welcome you to our session on how to become a data scientist. I think you'll find that the panel to be full of very good, talented people. So before we get started, I want to go through some past news, community news, and then I'll turn it over to Mark, who will introduce our panelists and start the session. There we go. So past Summit 2020. So if you haven't already seen yet on LinkedIn, Twitter, the past site, it will be virtual this year. They will be having learning pathways to help you kind of go through and learn different topics. A few of those: SQL performance for developers, becoming an Azure data engineer, data security, data visualization, and storytelling. There's a little QR code here you can click on to find out more, or go to this link to find out more. But I believe the registration, the price will go up here shortly, I think, a little bit. But it is a lot cheaper now that it's virtual. And so I hope a lot of you guys and gals can attend. So up until today, I guess, is you got entered by today. You can win a 3-day registration to pass Summit 2020. So you can enter right here through this QR code, or go to Pass.org Summit 2020 attend allaccess.aspx. And I don't know what time it ends today, so you might want to hurry after this session is over and sign up to see if you can win an all access pass. I believe, if I remember right, it's for first time attendees, but don't quote me on that. I would go to the link and make sure and check on your own, but it'd be really cool for you to win it. So go ahead and check that out. Also, Pass has a lot of complimentary content they've been sharing from past Summit 2019, the one from last year. I know one of my sessions, Introduction to Python, actually was shared out about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, like a week or two into the kind of the whole COVID pandemic, when we were all kind of started working from home. I know they released one of my sessions out there. I know they've released several more since then. But if you go out to this link right here, on the bottom here is quick QR code. They have some content from Summit 2019 that you can go and view and watch sessions for free from the best of Summit 2019. So. Sorry, my slide deck. Oh, way to go. Sorry. I guess you all can see my PowerPoint stop responding for whatever reason. I do not know. I'm going to turn my camera off and see if that fixes it.
Yes, and Jamie, I could show the deck from my
if you don't mind,
perspective.
Mark, taking over, because for some reason my PowerPoint just went haywire. I'm not sure what happened here.
No worries. It's always good to have a backup, and I am the backup.
Sorry. I clicked through this earlier all the way through when we were all talking and didn't have a problem, so I'm not sure.
No, we don't. Okay, so let's just go to my screen. Hang on.
I'll make you a presenter, Mark. Okay, you grabbed it. Sorry about that, guys and gals.
Okay, so let me go. I'm going to advance to the slide where we were. Starburst.
Yep, that's it.
Go ahead.
Okay, so we'll be having a past partner webinar presented by Starburst. That will be on June 25th. They'll be giving away a free $100 free US $100 gift card from Visa, and that will be again on June 25th. And they will talk about how Starburst Presto is deployed on Azure Kubernetes services for fast SQL query engine. over Azure Data Lake Services. So,
Okay.
thanks, Mark. Also, we have quite a few upcoming virtual group webinars.
Right.
This
were the
slide,
past.
to the next one. Go to the next one there, Mark. I think these have already passed. So there's one on DBA fundamentals, which I think, looking at that time, is probably right before this one. So that one already happened as well. But go to the next slide. The cloud one, I think this is probably right after this session, if my UTC conversions are correct. I think that's what, 2 Central, 3 Eastern. So
Right.
tour of Azure SQL with Microsoft. And then tomorrow, we have 3 sessions on Power BI, big data clusters, machine learning, and Power BI. You can go to the Pass.org website to see that, and there's the links there on the right as well to go to those. And then another one, so we have 4, so it's a busy day tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then a few more, and then one all the way to July 9th. So go to pass.org and you can see all the virtual groups, sign up for the ones you want. Here's a little overview of all the different groups that Pass has. And then there's a lot out there. And then because of the pandemic, a lot of SQL Saturdays are going virtual. And here's a few of the ones that are upcoming on June 20th and then June 27th. We have 2 coming up. You can go to SQLSaturday.com to sign up for those. And then, are you looking for a new career, or are you recruiting for certain people? Pass has a career website, pass.org/careers.aspx, and you can go there to look for jobs that are posted there, post anonymous resumes, and then you can, if you're recruiting for talent, you can go there as well to look for people who are searching for talent. And then connect with Pass. They're on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, through Pass TV. And then, like I said, Pass is a free, like it says right here, Pass is a free membership. And you can sign up today at pass.org if you haven't already signed up. And I think that's the last slide. So, Mark,
That is the last slide.
I will mute my mic and turn it over to you to start the.
All right, so welcome everyone. We're talking today about how to become a data scientist, and I'm so excited to have the panel we do have today. We have 4 people who are individually so involved in motivating groups, leading people, being involved, hands-on data science, experienced, trained, have reached out, and each individual we have today has touched other lives and had, have had careers that have had a richness of different clients and experiences. So to kick it off, I'm gonna introduce them individually as they come on, and then the format for today is that we will all have a chance for interactive conversation after each presenter has their opening remarks. And we do want questions, so there's a questions area inside your box. Go ahead and type in questions right now, and Jamie will be looking at those questions and fielding some of them to us later. We record all the questions, so we will see every question, and don't worry that your question might not be answered during the session, because we will be able to send a copy to all presenters. So our first presenter right now is Dr. Beverly Wright. She's got over 25 years leading and executing data science and analytics through corporate consulting and academics experience. And currently, she leads the data science practice for RelationalAI and serves companies in Atlanta with the analytics and data science solutions. And I'm just going to skip to the end here. She currently serves as academic director for UGA Executive Education, teaches executive education at Emory University, operates a nonprofit using data science for good called Athletics, and serves as host for TAG Data Talk. So please welcome Dr. Beverly Wright.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. I'm super excited to tell you about my journey. for becoming a data scientist and by the way, nobody's an expert at this. So we're all sort of on this journey together. Trying to see if I can grab the screen share. Mark, you may have to release it for me.
Sure. Hang on.
Thank you, sir. All right. Cool. As mentioned, I'm Dr. Beverly Wright, and just a real quick word about data science in general. Let me check my time here. Yep. The excitement in data science is in the journey toward achieving significant finds, all kinds of results. And that's by Kirk. And many of you know Kirk, and he's a respected leader in the data science community. So I've been excited about data science since I found a decision sciences class at Georgia State back in 1989. I'm really dating myself here. I should use more caution with that. But it's still an exciting time, even though so many things have changed since. So what I'm going to cover is I'm going to give you real quickly in 7 minutes, I'm going to give you 4 tips about data science journey, and I'm going to give you one thing that I call my secret weapon. Okay. Again, for what it's worth, nobody's a real expert at this stuff. So number one, tip that I would have about your journey as a data scientist is try to understand the why. And what I mean by that is my students know that I use this term to mean that there's oftentimes this discussion about here's why we're doing this type of study, why we're asking for this type of analytic solution. But what I have found with the literally hundreds of projects that I've either overseen or personally executed is that oftentimes there's an underlying why behind the why. There's a stated why, but there's usually a real why. So if you can uncover that and keep your eye toward that goal, that will benefit you tremendously. And I'm, much like other people, I just want to do the cool stuff. I want to do the work. I want to build the neat models, but you really need to keep your eye on the reason for doing all that. By the way, I recognize some of these seem apparent, but they're harder to do than they are than to say. Second piece of advice.
Sorry,
Yes.
Beverly, I think your slide went off. Let's just.
Yeah, I was just about to chime in too. Yeah, your slide went off, Beverly.
Oh, weird. Okay, let's see if I can.
Oh, there it is. Okay. I'll just start again.
Okay.
That is.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yep,
cool. Great. It's on. It's off. Okay, cool. The second piece of advice is treat your data science journey more like a jungle gym than a ladder, because people talk about like this corporate ladder and always trying to climb the ladder. It doesn't have to be a ladder, and let me explain why. There are many people in this field that truly enjoy the technical aspect of it. If you like to code, then that's okay. Unfortunately, sometimes it's difficult to like to code at top level positions in data science. So I don't want you to feel obligated to take on higher and higher level positions as if this is a ladder. Sometimes, especially in this field, you are more comfortable doing kind of like what you like to do, which may be coding, which may be finding the insights, which may be having a hands-on discovery of what's in the data. And that's totally, completely okay. So treat your journey more like a jungle gym than a ladder. Third piece of advice. Can you guys see my screen okay? You good?
Yeah, yes, you're good.
Okay, great. My third piece of advice for you is in your journey to becoming a data scientist, be a part of something bigger. I'm just being really transparent with you guys. To be a part of something bigger, don't try to go it alone. The community, from what I have found, is way greater than trying to go it alone. So don't be afraid to connect within the data science community and think about how you sort of fit within that ecosystem. So what I'm trying to tell you is sort of try to find your niche, right? So think about it as how do I fit into this bigger network? And then the last piece of quick advice is try to have some patience. Have patience with yourself. You're not going to get it right 100% of the time. We all know that there's a POC graveyard in data science, right? So it's frustrating sometimes if you produce this wonderful analytic and you try to deliver it and it doesn't get used. But you sort of have to have patience because these things tend to happen for a number of reasons. You'll eventually discover how to get better at that. Also, be patient with your consumers, the people that are, consuming and eating your analytic. Like they may not get it right away. They may not. It may take time. So try to have patience with yourself. Try to have patience with your consumers, and thirdly, try to have patience with the actual discipline itself. We're trying. We're advancing. We're still lacking in some areas. I personally think that we're falling a little short on the ethics side of all this, but we're, as a discipline, as a data science, effort, we're trying. So try to have some patience with yourself, with your consumers, and with your discipline. And then the last thing I want to share with you is what I sort of call my the secret weapon, which is not very secret because I try to tell people this all the time. One of the things that I've been told is that I'm ridiculously curious, and I'm always asking myself, like, what if I try it this way? What if we look at that? And what if we transform this field? Or what if we try to have some curiosity? By the way, this is also one of the most difficult things. In the classroom, for example, it's very challenging to teach curiosity. It is possible to encourage curiosity, to try to stimulate curiosity, but you have to actually have it. And by the way, if you don't have curiosity about data, then you may not be in the right field. If you don't really care and you're waiting for someone to tell you what to do, then you probably shouldn't be in data science anyway. But there's a huge value for those of you who do have that inkling of, I'm curious to see what would happen if I try this or if I do this or what the data might say. Let yourself fall into that. Be okay. It's okay to be curious. It's good to be curious. So there's a huge value there. And that's my quick 4 tips with the secret weapon. I'll turn it back to you guys.
All right, thanks. And I'll introduce our next panelist here. David Howlett is a senior manager talent acquisition at Macy's Technology and a technology recruitment leader with more than 15 years of experience in attraction, development, and retention of tech talent. And he's focused on the area of data science, machine learning, and computer vision, deep learning, and artificial intelligence. So he is an active member of the Atlanta and New York data science communities and the founder of the Atlanta AI machine learning and deep learning meetup. So I know, David, you are muted right now, but as you come off mute, we'll be happy to have you share your points with the audience.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Beverly. And I agree with Beverly. One of the main points she made is having a passion for this. This is a lot about a lot of things, in particular data and intellectual curiosity. Of all the things she spoke about, those are the ones that resonate with me personally the most, because having spoken with her, having spoken with you, Mark, at these events, you'll find that there's excitement and enthusiasm talking about data and discovery and the possibilities. So that's first and foremost when you're considering a career in this. I have some points, and I'm going to start out with like a really quick roadmap for, let's say there's new grads or recent grads, and I'll say people with less than 2 years experience that may not be doing data science right now. They're trying to bridge their way into that. And this is my quick roadmap for those. And I'm going to address somebody mid-career too. I'm going to give you 2 examples of ways to get in. But the first one is a new and recent grad. My key tips are this: pick one programming language and become an expert. It doesn't mean you shouldn't have more than one language, but when you're going to do hackathons, when you're going to do these skill tests and things like this with employers, they're going to ask you, pick a language that you're best in: Python, Java, C++, whatever it may be, R. But pick one that you're an expert at, Have a second one, of course, but always be expert at something because you're going to be asked to do that. The next thing is be clear about your motivation, which I think I just addressed. Becoming a data scientist, don't kid yourself. It's hard. It's really hard. And you don't see all the sweat and all the years that Beverly or Mark have put in behind their careers to make them what they are today. And I can tell you, having Beverly, you're amazing, and Mark, same thing. You have to put in a lot of time. There's a lot of time put into this. The next thing is, as you're learning, you might have a degree in engineering, you might have a degree in statistics, something like that. You might want to start taking and doing some tutorials. Go out there, look at Coursera, look at some of these online courses, Open Source Data Science Masters, Data Camp, Class Central, iTunes U. But don't get stuck in a treadmill of just taking courses and looking for certifications. Do something, and then you do a project with that skill. I'll give you an example. You do something on a linear regression, and you then look for something in Kaggle to practice, to put it into practice. It's not just, rote memorization in a history course. You really need to put hands-on in this. Try to stick to small data sets and try to use the same data sources, resources, so that there's just so many out there. There's so many libraries, so you don't want to get caught up in changing all the time. Try to get comfortable with something and get really good at it. Immerse yourself in the community. That means go to hackathons, go to meetups today on these podcasts, things like this. Be part of the community, be relevant. You'll learn from the experts, you'll get to meet the experts, and you'll really find out if you want to do it. Maybe it's something you may not want to do, but you want to make sure. Find a mentor. It could be somebody inside your company that's doing this. It could be somebody out in the community. It could be a college professor. And finally, be prepared to sacrifice your weekends and your weeknights, because if you're serious about making the change into data science, you have to show people how serious you are to convince them, hey, let's give this person a shot that doesn't really have a lot of experience, but they put in all this energy. And I want to just recognize the amount of resources available today compared to, I won't mention a year now, Beverly, but you mentioned a year. The resources that people like Beverly, myself, or Mark had coming up is now, it's just an embarrassment of riches when it comes to resources. There's courses out there. I mentioned iTunes U, Data Camp, Class Central, which is Google's class. You can take you won't get credit, but you can take Stanford, Harvard courses, Georgia Tech, Cal Berkeley, and those are actual courses at MIT. Take those, you learn like they're learning, and it's amazing what's available. Practice, that's the next thing. Courses, practice. Kaggle, hashtag 100 days of code, code wars, hacker ranks, start pushing yourself to do better. Look at news blogs, that's the next topic. Data Elixir, Data Science Roundup, Data Camp, Kaggle, KD Nuggets is one of my favorites. I think Mark has mentioned it to me too. There's podcasts, which is what we're doing today. There's YouTube channels. Part of this lecture, Jamie's going to put this on YouTube so people can go back and listen, and then start following people that you admire or that are in the business. It could be David Robinson has chief data scientist at Data Camp. You have Chris Alburn, he's a data scientist. You have Frank Chen. There's just a limitless number of people that you can follow. Immerse yourself in this. Okay, so here are my tips. If you're at a company, this is the mid-career. That was a new grad. The person that's at a company, say you're working as a data analyst or a data engineer or a senior software engineer on some DevOps project that's touching data science. Work your way into that project if you're not on it. Talk to the leaders. It's easier to do that and do these other things that I mentioned that the new grad should do, courses and stuff like this, show the interest. So that's one. Two, volunteer with a not-for-profit. And I want to shout out for Beverly here, this Athletics. Do good. Do something and give your time. Don't expect money for everything. If you're trying to do something and make your, improve your standing in the data science community, do something for, learn and be part of the community. I go back to practice, Kaggle, Code Wars, HackerRank, etc. And then the next thing I would do if you're, one of the people that are mid-career or early career, find a job, target companies that are companies that have a lot of opportunities in the space of data science, machine learning, visualization, computer vision. You could look at an H2O.ai, a Data Robot, a Data IQ, Accenture, IBM. There's a lot of companies that are just building these massive practices, and target those companies. These are all different ways of angling yourself. But the key to this is just because you learn all these things today, we can all tell you, everybody on this panel will tell you, you have to be a lifetime learner. You can't stop looking. The innovation that's happening in this space right now, it's exponential. It's growing so fast. People are coming up. The algorithms are pretty much the same. It's all of the software and all the tools and all the, the little things, automation that are happening that you have to be on top of. Google has some really incredible stuff happening now, and others do also. So stay plugged in with blogs, stay plugged in, and attend hackathons, be part of the community, and be authentic. If you're here, people will see your passion, and you'll be able to show them, I did this, Kaggle, I did this, or you talk to people in your company, etc. But that's pretty much it, Mark. Thank you very much.
Thanks, David. Just enjoyed that energy. And now we are going to go to Phil Coachman. Phil started his career building business applications 20 years ago, but his data science journey started 12 years ago at Microsoft, working on Bing, and eventually working on other projects like Xbox and Windows 10. He has spent the last 5 years helping companies with their data and AI projects in the Microsoft Azure cloud. He's a regular speaker at conferences, a guest lecturer at multiple universities on AI, and I'm so proud that we are on the same team at Microsoft. So glad to have Phil here today.
Hey, thanks so much, Mark. Really appreciate the opportunity to talk in this type of forum. So there was some great advice from Beverly and David. I'm going to repeat a little bit of it, but the number one thing that I want to start with is to be a good data scientist, you have to love data, not AI. So loving the fact that you're going to deal with dirty data, you always need to get more data, or you want more data. Being able to explore the data and find the patterns and the correlations in that data is a major part of the job. So it's not just getting that predictive model and doing the cool stuff like teaching it how to play video games. It's really understanding the data and what's underlying it. And if you don't love data, you're probably not going to love being a data scientist. I read a quote from someone that said that if you don't love data, you probably just have a lustful relationship with AI, because you're really looking for that predictive model. And that leads to my next one is, don't be infatuated with the predictive model. A lot of the work that I do really comes down to understanding the data. And when we get to the modeling ends up being really easy. So if you look at any data science process, it's working with the data, separating it, cleaning it, creating features, doing feature engineering. And when you get to the modeling part, it's a lot of times it's one or two lines of code where it says, model.fit. Okay, now let me see what the output of that is and understand it. But there's not a lot to that, and until you get into some deeper stuff. But when you're doing things like linear regressions and logistic regressions, the modeling is the easy part. It's getting the right data and really, really loving to have your hands in data. Which leads me to my third point, which is be a solid data engineer. So a lot of the data scientists that I worked with, whether they're new hires, college grads, or have been doing this for a long time, the ones that really stick out are the ones that can get the data themselves. Even working at Microsoft, when we were working on Bing, there was two different groups of data scientists. There were the ones who got the data and got more data and brought it in and built the data pipelines themselves and came the whole cycle. And there were the ones who had to depend on data engineers to get all the data for them, and they just built the models. Today at Microsoft, when you look at the data scientists, most of them now are the people who can do everything from start to finish. I can get a data source, bring that data in, and go the whole way down. And what that means is that you have to get really proficient at working with multiple types of data. So you'll see, if you're in a university, a lot of times your data is handed to you as CSV files. Kaggle competitions, a lot of CSV files are Parquet files. When it comes to working with real life data, you're going to be pulling data from things like SQL databases, Oracle or Teradata data warehouses, pulling data from REST APIs, maybe from Google Analytics or Facebook for marketing data, and trying to get that all together. So really being able to understand, how do I get access to data? How do I pull it together to work with it? Really going to make you a better data scientist and allow you to do a lot more than what you could by having to rely on somebody else. Beverly and David had mentioned, practice. So if you don't have a job, they mentioned Kaggle. I like to practice sometimes just with weather data. So I've done predictive weather predictions just to see, is it going to rain in the next 1 to 2 hours? And then I could have a device. I like to mess with IoT. I have a device that will tell me, hey, it's okay to go ahead and mow your grass or start some weed eating in your back 40 because I don't predict it's going to rain for 2 hours. That was a fun project, but it really allowed me to work on my data engineering skills and practice some of the things that I wanted to do. But outside of Kaggle, there's tons of data. So find something you're passionate about. If you're passionate about health, if you're passionate about social issues, that data exists. Data.gov is a huge resource of data. There's data everywhere right now that's coming out of cities. I work with my local city, which is Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and they have a ton of data that we work with. And my local meetup group, we've taken some of those and taken on 2 or 3 month projects like you would with a Kaggle competition and presented back to the city on solutions to help them do things better. So find something you're passionate about, find that data, and practice working with that data. And now here's a couple of don'ts that I want to leave you with is don't be afraid to ask questions. Beverly had mentioned curiosity. But one of the things when you're working with data is that you really have to have the business acumen. So understanding what that data means, what your customers look like, if it's customer data, if you're marketing data, what are the people you're marketing to? So if you don't understand what the data is or have the business acumen, find someone who does and ask them questions so that you really get that understanding. Just having the data is fun to work with, but when you get into practice, you really have to understand the data, the underlying business acumen of it as well. And when it comes to ask more questions, as a community, I'm involved really heavily in a meetup in Pittsburgh. We have about 2,000 members. We meet on a regular basis, and everybody presents, and it's always as a format of I'm going to present you something, and then we're going to have an open discussion about it. I find that the data science community is much smaller than most people think, and we're always happy to answer questions and help people come along. So don't be afraid to ask questions. And then the last thing is don't get caught up on the hype. So a lot of people that I know got interested in data science and AI, watching Google, teach a computer to play Go, or IBM Watson on Jeopardy winning. And those are really cool things. But at the base of it, there's still a lot of work in the data. So cool stuff is really cool to do, but in practice, a lot of the data science is really hard, and it goes back to the data. But then when you're doing the cool stuff like computer vision and doing facial recognition or speech recognition, cool stuff is cool, but if it's not ethical, then it's not useful. So I do a lot of stuff for computer vision and video analytics, and it's a tight line to walk between when is it ethical and when is it not. So I would say don't get caught up on the hype of all the cool stuff that's coming out. If you love data, it's all really, really cool. So just for me, seeing a scatter plot that actually shows a pattern that I can do something with for a customer really ignites me even more than building a model. But and the last thing is start to learn the terminology. So as you're going through, you'll start talking to data scientists, and as you ask them questions, especially some of the data scientists on this panel, they start talking about hyperplanes, and sparse data sets. They start talking about things like gradient descent and all types of different terminology that may just boggle your mind. So just spending the time to understand what people are talking about will really give you that extra step forward to be able to have those conversations and understand where to go from there. So Mark, that's about it. I think that was right around the minute mark. I want to make sure I respect everybody's time, but thank you for inviting me.
Yes, thank you so much. I enjoyed having you, and I'm loving the presentations that we have here and what we're able to share. Let me get to sharing my screen. So hang on while I go to the monitor. Hopefully that should be showing now. It's coming up, and there we are. So how to become a data scientist. And of course, I'm co-founder of this group, and we have had many sessions over time, and always looking at more ideas. Now, I have 5 ideas here. and I'll tell you what they are. So first one here is about having a written plan. Now, I know as you've heard the advice from our presenters so far, and if you're either taking mental or written notes, it can be daunting to chase, like 5 different interesting ideas that people may be mentioning today. So I think it's good to write it down. Now, just because you write it down doesn't mean it's written in stone. It means you can still have an eraser, change your mind, or have revisions. And but I think it's always good to write down what is it you want to accomplish and by when. And then, what are the goals for whatever program you're going into. I used to mentor some doctoral students, and one question I asked them at the beginning is, what do you want to do after graduation? And it's good enough to have a vague idea, but it always is, before we go into the next training. And of course, I think you heard the message. I'm continually in training, and Phil knows this very well. We continually have training in our regular role at Microsoft, but we always have to be having our own personal goals on top of whatever that is. So the written plan more has to do with what your goals are. The second one, getting organized. I like to be an organized person. I like to be a zero email inbox type person. It's continually a struggle with managing so many calendars. I got multiple calendars now. I got so many ways people can message me, and then mobile and different ways. And it's hard with the flood of information to get organized. But I think it's always good periodically to take a step back and organize our own data. Why? Because going even back to Phil's point, organizing our own data is the discipline that we help our clients and customers and people that we serve and work with. So it is challenging, and I'm not going to say it's simple or easy, and I'm not even going to say that there's any one plan I recommend. I like using OneNote to keep notes, and I'm always using calendars and trying to keep that organized for my own life. But I think this is important for personal professional practice, to talk to other people. How do you get organized? What tools do you use? A third point here is about networking. And I like to feel like this group is a great way to network. Past organization is a great way to network with other people. It is the professional friends that we have are so important in shaping the way we think about our life and our journey. And we choose to spend time or more time with people that we find specific inspiration from. For example, like the panelists today, I love hearing the energy, and I always get inspired by hearing each one of them give their points or sharing their wisdom. I heard the point earlier about volunteering. I think volunteering is a good way to network. You might not consider yourself maybe the most extroverted person, but there's always a conference looking for people to help organize or send emails, or there's always some tasks that don't necessarily involve public speaking. Public speaking is still a turnoff for a lot of people. It's not the only way to network. Today, you can network by joining open source communities and contributing code, or even blogging. There's many ways to network that would fit your personality and your life commitments. Okay, my fourth point here is drawing on your passion. And there's a book that I recommend. It's called What Color's Your Parachute? It does have to do with job hunting, but more generally, it has to do with life shaping. And you may find this, if you're married and you're talking with your spouse, or you're talking with your family, you're talking with your household about your career, a lot of times that discussion is a group discussion, at least 2 people, maybe more. But the passion that you have is going to intersect with the area that is of most interest. And I think, as you've heard the message earlier, there's so many areas, there's so many languages, there's so many technologies, there's so many industries out there. And it's not something that, again, you have to lock in for a long period of time, but you do have to lock in, I think, long enough, and we have a picture here of grass growing, at least long enough for what I would call a season. What is a season? Well, in case of grass or a lot of plants, it's 1 year. But what is the season that you're in now, and where do you see the opportunities are for either an industry or technology. And the seasons change, I know, and you see the weather system there on this picture right above that. So when we're talking about something that's paying the bills, we all have to pay attention to where the economy is and where the needs are. But I always go back to the word on the left. It can be fueled by your passion. And right now there are so many people in so many industries doing data science that there are wide open opportunities to define careers and to define a chart and a life journey that way. And my last point here is about giving back. And giving back is, for me, it's informed by my own Christian worldview, but there are so many ways to give back to the community. We talked earlier, Beverly's involved here in Atlanta with a nonprofit serving the community. And giving back, to me, is one of the best ways to become well known in data science. A lot of times people may not know, an algorithmic contribution, but when they see somebody making an impact in the community and in a visible way, that is a good thing. It's not always important to be visible, but when that is a chance, and especially you see all the hands here, when you can join a team or lead a team of data scientists, or even be part of that team that's going out and making a difference, that is, real chance to have an impact. And it's a memorable thing. This is also what fuels me to give back through public presentations. And we talked about not just becoming a data scientist, but what keeps our energy and motivation going forward. I have a QR code here. My slides are already in my SlideShare account, so you'll be able to see that. I have some ideas here about specific training. Some of them were mentioned earlier today, but we'll have this link available later on. You'll be able to see it in the deck. Okay, so that's all I wanted to show for that. So if we could have our presenters who have their camera, and David was having issues with his camera, but he will be online. Good, thank you. And and then you can also come off mute, but I'm gonna just have a chance. Let's just go through us individually. Any comments? I'll start with Beverly because she went first. Do you have any comments you have having heard the other three speakers? Any feedback?
I think it's interesting the diversity as well as the similarities. You've got 4 people telling you a couple of things. So the consistencies are things like the curiosity, nobody really said constant learning, but I think we're all sort of saying it in the background. And the benefiting the community, like connecting with the community and giving back to the community. So you heard a lot of consistencies come through our presentations. And it's encouraging. It's also interesting to hear some of the differences, that came through. So that's my only comment. It's just I hope you guys were able to take different perspectives that led to the same kind of road. Yeah.
Right. I love that. David, what did you think?
I love the word passion came up several times. I think we heard the word data, loving data, or truly, looking at data, structured, unstructured, because people think, there's an impression that data science is just taking this really clean data and putting it all together, and it's in disparate formats. It's dirty, and sometimes your job is to get your hands dirty with the data and understand it and understand the problem. And one of the things I forgot to mention, I think, was domain. And I think I'm trying to think who mentioned that. Somebody mentioned domain, become an expert in a domain. And I think part of that is from you too, was talking about, the season of growing. I think somebody's expertise is well utilized when they're an expert in healthcare, they're an expert in banking, they're an expert at something, or a SME. And that's becoming master of the domain, because being a data scientist, and again, I'm borrowing from all you, that it's multidiscipline. So, there's a part, of all these pieces that you have to put together. And I think what's really fascinating, I think Beverly captured this, is that I had no idea that there would be things that we're all 100% aligned on. I kind of smiled when I heard people talking, and it's fascinating that we all have different journeys, but at the same time, we all understand certain components of this are all really important to being successful. And the last thing I think you hit on, Mark, was the constant learning. I call it lifetime learning. I believe that, just like I can't think of the law, everything changes every 2 years. It has to do with hardware, but I think it applies to in all the innovation that's happening in data science right now. I think you're seeing, automation with machine learning. It's becoming automated machine learning. There's all of these things happening, and I think you have to constantly be looking at what's next and kind of retooling your skill set. You don't have to change who you are, but adding additional things to your skill set. And I think you guys have captured that also.
That's great.
That's
Phil,
called
what's
Moore's law, by the way. Moore's law is
Moore's
what.
law.
Thank you so
Right.
much. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Go ahead, Mark. Sorry.
So we'll go to Phil for any comments.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised again, just like Beverly and David said, about how much we all had in common. Especially with the community. A lot of times when you're working, you feel like you're in your bubble and you have your own community, and then as you go out to forums like this, you realize everybody else also has their bubbles and their community bubbles, and at some point they're all going to kind of join together, and we're going to have this much larger community. But and then along with the lifetime learning, one of the things that I wanted to say is I love to see the algorithm research. So I read, the papers coming out of universities on a regular basis, but there's so much available now that's so easy to get to. And I think David had mentioned that, 20 years ago when I started, I was going to Walden Books and Barnes & Noble and buying books on subjects. And now with, things like Stack Overflow, with Kaggle, with Towards Data Science, I mean, there's so much out there that it is almost impossible to keep up. So you almost have to find, as David said, is that specialty and try to focus in on that, because otherwise you can get overwhelmed with the learning and it really becomes a daunting task. And I think that touches with what you had mentioned with the seasons of learning is don't get overwhelmed by it, because there is a lot out there.
Sounds great. Now Jamie's back, and I'll let Jamie go if you want to go to any of the questions that we have here. I know we've see a few posted here.
Sure. So Christina asked, I'm currently an ETL database developer. I am interested in data science. Do the panelists recommend certificates or degrees in data science as a means of beginning the journey?
Okay, anyone want to take that?
I could speak to that, and you guys can hop on, of course, but I think it's pivotal to have, a lot of people would disagree with this. I'll just put it right out there. But I think it's important to have at least one solid degree that's in a close to data science field, whether that's at least engineering or computer science or applied statistics or actually analytics. So that's my take on it. That being said, it's not like you can't, self-teach and complement that. But other things like certifications and certificates are actually two different things. You notice if you connected me on LinkedIn, I have a CAP at the end of my name because I'm certified analytics professional, which is a fairly prestigious certification offered through Informs, which everybody on this call probably knows who Informs is. There's also certificates you can get from your universities. Like I teach in the certificate program at University of Georgia, go Dogs. So you can earn certificates in data science. I'm doing one on how to prep for the CAP exam, or there's another one about data science for non-data scientists. So there are certificates and there are certifications, but I'd still think that you need at least one degree.
I can speak to that quickly also. This is David. I'm going to borrow from Linda Birch. She has a search firm that specializes in analytics and data science, and she literally talks to everyone. Her organization talks to everybody. The number she has right now is that 68% of all of the data scientists in the market right now either have a master's or a PhD. And Beverly hit the nail on the head. Statistics, mathematics, and computer science were the top three. Doesn't mean I've found amazing people with physics, but there's a lot of math and underlying everything there. So there has to be a passion for that. And the easiest road to success is with a degree in one of those disciplines for sure, because it just prepares you for what's ahead. That was it.
Yeah, I would add to what Beverly had said is so, and just to be frank, I don't have a degree at all. I'm a high school graduate and worked really, really hard to get to this point without a degree. But the people I work with, especially a lot of the new hires and just getting into the field, all have some sort of a degree. Now, if you already had a degree in computer science and making that shift to data science, there are definitely ways about that, and you've done some coding, and you've had some math background. But if you were starting with no degree and getting into it, it's definitely a lot bigger hill and a lot harder battle to go through than if you had a degree that could back that up. Just with the field is a lot more advanced than it was as I was getting into it on the West Coast, decades ago. So it's definitely easier now if you have a degree.
Yeah, and to support Phil's point, we're being shaped even by internal training that we take or are required to take. A lot of times presenters will focus on the 3, the 5, the 7 things that you need to know for whatever topic it is. And often Phil and myself, we often find ourselves presenting in that way. We want to focus people on the areas that you need to focus on, and it changes. And the thing is that, how we approach any of these topics today, 2020, is different from 2017. So even as you're going out there and, you have wide open internet, and I find this the challenge even now with Stack Overflow. Some of the Stack Overflow is now getting so old that some of the advice in there is no good anymore. Sorry, but it isn't. Now, how do you know the difference? Sometimes you'd have to know the field, but it goes back to the point of a structured program. Structured programs, and I know Beverly, for example, has been instrumental in creating programs. They're always rethinking, what do you need now? Not 5 years ago, not 10 years ago, not when you were in school, but always keeping current with the trends. So it's important to know a lot of these certificate and degree programs, the better ones are keeping current in that way. So Jamie, do we want to go to maybe another question?
Yeah, I think kind of what you were just talking about leads into this question from James, which is, do you have specific sites that are good for training?
Well,
So the site that I go to, oh, go ahead, Beverly.
No, you go ahead. I went first last time.
So yeah, one of the top sites that I like is Towards Data Science. So that site has a lot of resources, a lot of really good articles. And then, on top of that is Kaggle and KD Nuggets. But I would say Towards Data Science is one that I'm on a regular basis myself, learning new things. Beverly?
Thanks. Yeah, for sure. Kaggle, whatever, however you pronounce, and KD Nuggets are table stakes. I would also point you to Informs. As far as just training, general training, how do you feel about Data Camp?
Yep,
I haven't used it as much as heard other people. So, but it's kind of mixed. Some people like it and some people don't. But Data Camp, KD Nuggets, Kaggle, Informs, I think I would say those are my kind of top that I recommend to people.
Yeah, I put other links in my deck, Pluralsight, Coursera, edX, and just letting people know some of those sites are aggregating presentations from many authors. So the quality is going to vary, but overall it's very good. I mean, Pluralsight I can recommend. It's good to actually get the same subject several times. So it's actually, for example, if you want to learn Python, don't just look at one course, no matter where it comes from. Look at a few of them, compare the, curriculum and see what they're going to show, and kind of mix and match.
Anyone else?
I like Data Elixir. It's basically sends you something into your inbox every Tuesday on data science, and it's from around the web. There's something called Data Science Roundup, but you mentioned some of the others that I like. The Kaggle, whatever, KD Nuggets. I like Torch Data Science. Those are all excellent. I actually promote a lot of those where I like the article and I push it onto LinkedIn because I like it so much. And you know, these are, again, an embarrassment of riches when it comes to resources on the internet. It's really incredible how much is available.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks.
Jamie, what else do we have?
So Madonna asked, what if you're coming from a non-technical background? How do you enter into data or marketing science?
Mm-hmm.
That's a tough road. And a huge congrats to you, Phil, because it is a tough road. If I had the choice, if you can, if you can get a degree, then do. If you're in a situation where you just can't and you're trying to like fill in little pieces here and there, I mean, some things I think are sort of core. This is just my opinion, of course, but I think some things are core, like that 1 degree I told you about. And then other things are sort of like keeping current and staying on top of it and auxiliary, so to speak. But if you're starting with, I don't know, I'm just trying to make something up to make it as different as possible, like art history. And with art history, there's all kind of skills that are needed, but not necessarily anything that's technical. Then that's going to be extremely, I mean, that's just a complete pivot from your previous. It doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means that you have to remember that 60 something percent. By the way, Linda Birch, ton of respect for her. She's one of my board members. I'm the chair of the board at Informs, and she's on my board. You have to remember that the number that Linda gave, which is 60 something percent that have masters and PhDs. And if you are trying, if you're, again, I'm using extreme as, as to illustrate the point. If you're an art history major and you have zero technical skill and you say, I want to be a data scientist, first of all, why? Really ask your question, ask that question to yourself. Like, why do you want to be a data scientist? Is it in the context of art history? Or are you trying to like better that, or are you completely changing directions? In which case, why? What motivated you to be in art history, and what's motivating you to do data science? So you really got to think about if it's truly your passion, or if you're sort of riding a wave of, oh, I heard it's the hottest job, right? So you have to ask yourself why, and if you really, really want to pursue it, you're going to have to invest, right? Because there's a lot of competition out there. So I'd say that coming from a completely different area is quite tough.
I would agree with Beverly. I think entry into data science is more difficult now than it was, and Mark said 3 years ago, 4 years ago. Entry is harder. I saw people with bachelor's degrees getting in 3 and 4 years ago where the bar is now masters. And again, I want to say this to Phil. Phil, you obviously have a passion and a high aptitude for mathematics, statistics, et cetera. And so I want to credit you there. And know that Bill Gates and Steve Jobs took 1 year of college. I mean, there's brilliant minds. So I want to say that. But it's just the path getting into it is harder now without some of these things. It's harder to get into now than it is, a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
so
I go back. I mean, I just happened to be on the West Coast, and because I was a web developer, Microsoft was building a big data platform using .NET. So I got to be there as Hadoop was being invented and actually work on some of the things as we were building those platforms. And getting into that time, there was 8 people at Microsoft that had a title of data scientist. So it wasn't a common thing to have data scientists either. We had statisticians. And yeah, I mean, 12 years ago, it was a lot easier barrier to entry compared to now. But I would say, from a non-technical background, my wife is a dental hygienist, and she's been going down the path of, she learned data. She took some courses at the university where she had graduated, University of Pittsburgh, on database administration and learning the data side of it first, just to see if she liked it. Because as I said, if you don't like data, then don't be a data scientist. So now she's gathering data for an organization that I run and managing that and starting to play with the predictive analytics. But for her, it's a huge upward path because she hates math. She hates statistics and probability. So I told her that she probably wouldn't be a very good data scientist, but she loves the data side of it. So she probably end up being a good data engineer, and that's where her path will end. But she got into it because of the data science side and realized that math just isn't something that interests her at all. So, but yeah, it is a hard barrier to entry now. But any further learning you can get is going to make that a little bit easier.
Right.
And that's great advice that you gave her, by the way, Phil. I love that. And that's not to say that you can't, just to clarify, it doesn't mean that you can't know and learn everything you need to know and learn. Some of this is appearance. You know, it's going to be hard to even get your resume seen or be taken seriously if you're new in this job market and you don't have the right academic credentials right up front. So it doesn't mean that you won't know it or you can't learn it. It just means it's harder if you don't have that credibility. You also have to remember, for those of you that are in Atlanta, we've got lots of incredible talent right now that are struggling because of our pandemic. And so that's going to put more people into the marketplace, and you know, not necessarily, there's not necessarily a one-to-one match with the jobs. Does that make sense?
It does. And we are coming up on time. I'd like to, I know we're spilling over a few minutes here, but we are going to go around to the panelists and have them express how to connect with them on social media. So we'll start with Beverly and then we'll go to David. Or, I mean, where are you on social media?
Oh, me, yeah, this. You can see me on LinkedIn, so it's David Howlett, Howlett. My email, david.howlett1@gmail, and you can hit me there, and I'd be glad to answer questions. I had some slides too. Unfortunately, I had technical difficulties today, but I'd be glad to share some links with people who are interested. And you know, feel free to reach out, and please, again, participate, be part of the community.
Okay, and then Beverly?
Can I have can I show my slides real quick?
Yes, yes.
Is that possible? Okay, I have a summary slide. The best way to reach me is probably LinkedIn. So just join my network on LinkedIn. It's under Beverly Wright, PhD, CAP. I'm also the co-founder for a nonprofit that uses data science for good called Atlytics, ATL for Atlanta Analytics for Community Service. That's why it's Atlytics. So you can find that on Meetup. We actually just had a meeting yesterday and we had 118 people participate online. Third, you can take a listen to my podcast called Tag Data Talk. It comes out monthly. And then fourth, feel free to join my newsletter. It has a tiny URL and it's under Beverly Wright News. So those are probably the best ways to see me.
Great. Okay, and to Phil.
Top platform I use is LinkedIn, so it's Phil Coachman on LinkedIn. I publish articles there and regular, so join my network. I'm happy to chat with anybody around data. I'm rarely on other social media platforms, but I'm heavy on LinkedIn.
Yes, and me too, heavily on LinkedIn, but I'm also on Twitter at MarkTabNet. So thanks to our panelists, and we'll go to Jamie to close.
Thank you everyone for joining us. Like was mentioned earlier, this will be posted on the Past TV site for you to watch later on if you want to listen to it again, or if you missed some of the links or different things that people said, you'll be able to get it there. And thanks again, everyone, for joining.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
And Jamie, there will be a stop broadcast